I was a refugee. I was 9 years old when I left Cambodia. I was born in 1971. And so I was born into a very difficult time in history of Cambodia and maybe of most of part of the world at that time, right? 1969, 1968. A lot of wars. I was lucky with my family. We were able to survive the Khmer Rouge. And in 1979, at the end of the Khmer Rouge, we were able to escape to Thailand. And then just by luck, by some good spirit looking over us, we were relocated to the US in 1984 through many different refugee camps and all of that. I studied painting in my undergrad years, and I had a master's degree in painting as well, and finished that in 1999. 2 years after that, I felt that it was not enough for me to be in the US. There was just, you know, with my family being there, and I am sort of the black sheep in the family making art. It just didn't make sense for me to have so much pressure. And being an artist, you know, from my background, it's a very unlikely prospect of having any way of making a living and being happy. At the same time, I felt that, you know, being in the United States, that environment was also not good for me making my work, because I have to do so many other things to just make a living. So I decided that it was time to go back to Cambodia. And I've never been back to Cambodia since I left. So, you know, the first time I came back, I pretty much just fell at home and continued to paint for about 2 years until I found that I was just going nowhere with painting either. And so, you know, my mother would call me all the time saying, why don't you come back home and work at the family shop? So that was the prospect that I had. And I said, well, if you wanted me to just be an alcoholic, sure, I'll come back. So I struggled on, and I guess it was my luck again. At that time, feeling that painting was not enough, I had to find some other way to make art. I had to find some other way. The thing was that the painting, why it wasn't enough was because it just didn't seem to have any effect. I was making these things on this flat surface in my studio, and you know, it didn't make any sense to other people. It was some kind of struggle in my head because of all the painters I knew and the history that I had in school and all that stuff, and it was missing something. And at that time, I made my first sculpture, the very first sculpture I've ever made out of Rattan. I made the first sculpture out of Rattan because the Rattan was just across the street from me. There was a Rattan shop. And I wasn't thinking sculpture, I was thinking form, just to make a form. So that form basically becomes a kind of three-dimensional drawing. And when I put it on the wall, it just felt, it felt like I've never seen it, nothing like that before. And so I was very lucky again. The French Cultural Center director at that time, his name is Guy Isongju. He spent 2 years in Cambodia and basically saw the sculpture on the floor because I didn't think much of it. Told me that the sculpture gave him goosebumps and that this is the first modern art he's ever seen in Cambodia. I had no idea what that meant, of course, at that time. But he said, you know, if you want to continue in this direction, I will give you a solo exhibition in 4 months. So basically for the next 4 months, I eat, sleep, drink sculpture. I bought a lot of rattan and I just started making. And you see I have no style. It's really just very simple grids. Because I don't know any weaving or anything. People often say my work is weaving, but I don't know how to weave. So it's basically using a wire on bamboo or on rattan, because rattan is flexible and bamboo is sturdy. And I learned that because I needed to make a standing sculpture, and I realized rattan doesn't stand up very well. But my method was always very simple. And that simplicity, I think, I find joy in that simplicity, because it reminds me, and I said this many times before, that it goes back to my childhood, growing up, you know, in the Khmer Rouge, making toys, making arrows, making slingshots, making fishing things, traps, rat traps, you know, that sort of thing. And I really enjoy that process. I love working in a quiet place. I love just being with the work all the time. So that's the sort of general background of where I come from with this work. With this exhibition, Russell had approached me, I think maybe a year and a half, something like that, a year and a half or 2 years ago. He went to Cambodia a couple of times, and basically started talking to me about possibility of inviting me here to be in this group among these great artists. And you know, he kind of told me the context in terms of the Mekong region. You know, what kind of work do I want to show, and you know, what part of my being do I want to know, people to know me for the first time here. And I felt that, you know, so we talked about that for a while, and it started out with just making some grand sculpture or some installation of some kind. And, you know, basically, I felt that to be sincere and to be, just to give an introduction to who I am and what affected me in my life was maybe more important than trying to show that I can do something grand. Yeah. So I told, you know, my life is very complicated. It's you know, it happened a long time ago, it seems to me, but choosing 1979 as a theme is a significant one, because it was the first time basically in my life that I saw the world. I never knew that actually the world existed beyond my little village. Because in how I grew up, we have no electricity, no car, I mean, there's just nothing. I mean, no cassette tape, no nothing. We had maybe a drum in the whole village. So walking from that village to the province that my parents knew, which is, we were living in a province, but we were living outside of the province. My family has always been farmers. But during the Khmer Rouge, we would move around, and we settled in this one place called McClure. So walking back to the main center of town to find possibility of starting something, or, you know, because everybody was just completely open. The whole country was open. You can go wherever you want and just do the best you can with nothing, you know. So these are basically, except for the Buddha, these are basically all the objects that I still remember very clearly, that I saw in the landscape just kind of scattered around. And every time we take a break, and it was about a 5 days or 7 day journey, every time we take a break and sleep or something like this, I would go around wherever, you know, in the rice field or near the houses or something like that, and go around and I would find these things, like this is a pair of binoculars, for example. Or, you know, some part of bombs. I remember seeing it vaguely, I mean, all rusty, and sometimes they drop on the ground and they stay that way, you know. And parts of airplanes or part of tanks, you know. And the landscape is kind of camouflaged with the trees and the bushes. So the shapes weren't exactly, to me, very clear. So I often, at the time, I would bring these objects, the small ones like binoculars or water bottles or some kind of round things, and I was my father, what is this, you know? And my father would say, you're not supposed to touch these things. You don't know, if they don't know what it is, don't touch it, because it might be very dangerous. So this is, for me, the idea of playing with scale, and these sort of animals are they're like me, like nobody, like a person who very innocent, doesn't know anything. And when you see these things for the first time, you're not afraid. You just walk around it and you pick it up and you play with it. So that's basically the time. And then we ended up coming to the province and settled in front of a pagoda. And at that time, my father somehow, he traded some rice or something, and he got 2 buffaloes. And we used to, myself and some of my relatives, at that time we found our relative by just coincidence, just on the streets. Meet each other again, so we kind of settled down in this one area in front of this temple, and I would take the buffalo to the fields and just kind of watch the buffalo graze, all day, and again go hunting, shooting for snakes and all that stuff for food. In this temple, every now and then we wander into the temple, and the temple was, of course, at that time there was nothing going on in the temple. There was no monks or anything like that, so we just wandered around, and inside this temple there was a lot of blood, just a blood stain everywhere. It was pretty amazing, like if you squirt blood with a spray gun or something on the floor and on the ground and all that stuff. So I thought, what a strange thing, that inside the temple there's all this blood. So that's where the Buddha sculpture kind of come in the end. It's to symbolize that place. But I'm a person of really no fixed religion. It scares me to make a Buddha, because it's been made so many times, but it was not an option for me to just buy a Buddha and paint it red or something. That just wasn't enough, because it was not my Buddha. So when I started to make this Buddha, I just thought, well, I should just start with the head, and then just see how it ends up. And if it ended up being really complete, it probably wouldn't work. But okay, I just have to start somewhere. So then the Buddha starts from the head to the shoulder, and then one arm, partly, and then the rest, I just didn't think it needed any more definition. I ended up painting the tip of the Buddha red, the little red dyes. You can barely see it, but it's there. And that's for me just enough to say that there's something happened with the Buddha. The Buddha is broken, or the Buddha is not the Buddha that we expect to see.